Good afternoon, and welcome to Creating Drawbox Parts. Create Drawbox Parts is a new tool we've added to CabWriter 4, and its purpose is to take the drawboxes that are typically on the purchased parts scene, like this one here, and convert those into 5 individual drawbox parts: the front, back, right side, left side, and bottom. Before we do this, I want to walk through a few things that you should be aware of and some techniques and procedures to follow. This model is the same model that I used in the CabWriter Comprehensive 3 video series. And what we did in that model is we produced a scene called Cutlass, and that has most of the things that we want to cut either on a table saw or on the CNC in it. In this case, we're cutting the drawer fronts and the door fronts, as well as the cabinet parts. What I should take off here, by the way, is custom parts, which are the countertops. On the DXF scene, again we have the drawer fronts and the door fronts because we want to cut those on the CNC. But besides that, all we have is the base boxes and upper boxes. So these are the two scenes that we primarily use when we want to create things like CabWriter production reports. The purchase parts scene is reserved for anything that we want to purchase from a third party. Now in this model, we decided we wanted to purchase the draw boxes themselves, but because these drawer fronts and door fronts were simple panels, we wanted to cut those on the CNC. But suppose you want to create your own drawer boxes and you want to cut them on a CNC. Up to this point you couldn't do that, but now you can. And the way we're going to do that is by replacing these boxes with draw box parts. That's the purpose of this new tool. But before you do that, make sure you have things set up similar to this. In other words, make sure you have a cut list scene. You can call it a different name if you'd like. Make sure you have a DXF scene and a purchase part scene. And put the things, the draw boxes, on that purchase part scene to begin with. Now, to replace these, it's a simple matter of going to the Draw menu, CabWriter, Create Drawbox Parts. And when I click on this, I'll get this simple dialog box. It's called the Draw Box Type dialog box. Now, I have to choose how I'm going to replace these. If I want to replace just some number of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever of them, what I would do is I would select them. Select the ones you want to replace, like that, and tell this box that I want to replace them by selection. That means only the things that are selected, only the draw boxes that are selected will be replaced. If I want this entire scene, everything in this scene to be replaced, I choose by scene. And if I choose to replace by scene, then I have to provide the scene that is the target. and typically that will be the purchase part scene. Next thing I have to do is decide what type of boxes I want. Now there's 5 boxes that you can choose from. Butt joints, where the sides are captured. That is, the front and back are the full width of the draw, and the sides are slightly less than the depth of the draw by the thickness of the front and back. This is the same kind of draw box, but the captured pieces are now the front and back. That is, the sides are the full depth of the draw, whereas the front and back are the width of the draw minus the width of the sides. And there's 2 of them. So these are basically the same except how you do the butt. This is a draw that's basically a butt joint. The difference being that the bottom is only riding in dados in the sides, and there are no dados in the front and back. Now I'm going to model each of these types of draws so you will see what I'm talking about. The rabbet is simply the sides are rabbeted into the front and back. Other than that, they're pretty much the same as the captured butt captured sides, but with rabbet joints. The tongue and groove is slightly different, and you'll see that as we draw these parts, but you actually have a tongue that is fit into the sides, so that as you pull the draw out and maybe slam it shut or something like that, what you're doing is pulling on the sides. So let's take a look at each type of this draw, and I'm going to do that by using the by selection method. And I'll start with the simple butt captured sides. And so I'm going to select that one, say OK. Now I'm using the butt style draw. Now you'll notice that there are some grayed out areas. Depending on the style of draw we choose, different areas will be grayed out. And to help you, a number of these input fields will change this picture so that you will see what it is you're entering in the data field. For instance, if I hit the data width like that, the picture changes, and now we have a representation of the data width. That's how wide the dado is. The dado depth is here. It's how deep the dado blade goes into the wood. Now, it may, in the case of a CNC, this won't be a dado blade, it'll be a cutting bit. The same is true of the support width. That is, how wide is this bottom part? That is, from the bottom of the inside of the side to the bottom of the dado itself. This is a dimension that specifies how much clearance you want to leave between the wall of the dado and the edge of the bottom. There's also a gap up here, but that gap is determined by the thickness of this bottom and the dado width. So if you make them equal, there'll be no space here. But you might want to provide a little space for glue or what have you, or for expansion if you're using hardwood. This is a notch that's going to be put in the back, and it's for the slider. So the slider width and slider thickness are shown here. This is the width, and this is the thickness. Now in this we're going to use sheet goods, and I'm going to make it maple plywood pre-finished, and I'll leave the rest of these dimensions alone, but I'll just show you that because these are fairly obvious, the thickness of the sides and the resizing is fairly obvious. This is exactly the same as the resizing on the I believe it's the carcass tab in the CabWriter settings. And the front, back, and sides can be the same material in the same width. The bottom can be a different material and different width, but I'm going to choose, again, sheet good, maple plywood. And now I'm ready to draw the And there you go. It's already replaced that draw. Let me do the rest, and then we'll take a close look at them. And so I'm going to use the same scene. I'm going to use selection. And this time I'm going to do the second one. I'll say OK. And I'm just going to say draw. And that one's done. Now I'll choose this one. And I'll say selection. OK. And say draw. And I'll choose, I hope I did that correctly. I'm going to back up. I used the undo tool. I'm going to back up and redo that one. I'm not sure I chose the right one. Selection. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I didn't. Now I did. Okay. Now I'll do this one. Whoops, let me back. I keep selection. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rabbit. There we go. All right, you have to select a part. Selection. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rabbit. And I'll just say draw. You can tell I'm making these all out of the same material and thicknesses and things like that. And lastly, I'm going to do the tongue and groove. If I don't make a mistake. Now, the tongue and groove takes a little while. You'll notice when we do, you'll see when we do all of these, it'll actually take 15-20 seconds. But anyway, here they are. They're all here. Let's take a look at the first one. This is simply a butt joint all the way around. And each of these parts, in fact, let me unlock these. And I'll move them out a little bit. Each of these parts is dadoed. The front, the back, the side, this one over here as well. And in the back, you'll notice this notch for the slider. So that's the simple one. This one's the same, except notice that in this case, the sides were captured by the front and back. In this case, the front and back are captured by the side. Otherwise, exactly the same. This is very similar to the second one. Notice that the sides capture the front and back here, and the sides capture the front and back here. The difference being is that the front only goes down to the top of the bottom. Actually, there's a gap there, but beside that, it goes down to the top of the bottom, and it's the same in the back. And so now you don't need to create these notches because this is exposed back here. Here's the rabbet joint. It's very much the same as the first one, except the sides are a little longer and they're rabbeted into the front. And lastly, we're actually looking at the back of this draw, but you'll notice the sides capture the front and back, and they capture them with grooves that allow for the tongues in the front and back. But otherwise, again, they have this notch. Now the notch here in the back is just a cutout here. So that's the 5 different types of draw boxes. Let me back up. And in fact, let me back up a fair amount. Let's see whether I can back out of this whole thing. Okay. All right, so now I'm back to where I originally was. And I'm going to do the same thing this time, but I'm going to walk you through a procedure. So here's the way you would normally do this. Once your model is complete and you're ready to produce your production documentation, what you want to do, and by the way, I would make sure that the model really is complete to the best of your ability. That you can never tell when a client's going to come along with a change, but you really want to start this when you believe that the model is finished. And you're going to create production documentation, and you're going to do it twice. Once before you replace the draw boxes with the individual parts, and once after that. So on the first one, create production documentation. We can save a little time by not asking for any DXFs, just the 3 draw front, draw boxes, and door reports. It's particularly important that you select the draw boxes reports, because the draw boxes reports are based on this single box representation of a draw box, which has the information about the number of sliders and the overall dimensions of the draw box. So on your first running of the production documentation, you can leave off the DXF stuff, but include this stuff because you may want it later. So that's the draw fronts, draw boxes, doors, and a cut list. You need the cut list in order to get these reports, but the cut list is actually going to be replaced on the second run of this. The problem is I can't leave it out or I'll get an error because it's needed to produce this. So I'll say create reports. And it's created them pretty much. It'll tell us here in a second. So we saved a lot of time by doing this. This normally would take in the order of 1 minute and 15 seconds, something like that. So I say, okay, let's look at them. Okay, what I produced is the cut list here and the draw and door reports. And so here's all my slab doors, slab draws. And now I've got the slider information here, the Blum sliders, how many I need, and the overall draw box dimensions. And I'll want these for future reference. So here's the important part. Do not delete the folder that was just produced by the production documentation. Leave it alone. What will happen is on the second pass of running production documentation, it will replace this file, the cut list, but it'll leave this one alone because we're not going to ask for this on the second pass. And it'll just leave it here. That way you will have it, even though the draw boxes are now gone. The single representation of draw box. So let me close that. And now I'm going to go to my purchased parts. And I'm going to produce the tongue and groove just to show you how long it takes on a model like this. And I'll say by scene. And I'm using the purchase parts scene. And I want tongue and groove. So I'll say OK. And I'm going to let this run the course. It'll probably be on the order of almost half a minute, I think. So let's be patient. I don't know if you can hear that, but the fan in my machine is speeding up because it's using all of the CPU's individual computers. There we go. There they are. And so you can see, as you look at these, all of them are tongue and groove. Now here's something to note. The tongue and groove will take the longest to actually draw. But let me back up. And let me do another one. This time I'm going to do the rabbit. That was a little bit quicker. Actually, that's not... Let me back up again. Well, let me just redo this. Maybe I had the right one to begin with. Oh, yeah. Okay. I was mistaken. I think I had the right one to begin with, but we'll see in a moment. I have to be patient here. All right, let me pull this apart. I'll unlock this and pull that part out. Now let me look at this part. This is the dado here. This is the bottom support. And if I look on the other side, I've got the tongue, the rabbet for the tongue here. So if I want to cut this on a CNC, I've got to choose which side of this I'm going to cut on the CNC and which side I'm going to cut later, probably on a table saw, because you can't flip the part over and cut it again on the CNC. And so to specify which side I want to cut on the CNC, we have, if we go to CNC setup, we have this set of defaults here called CNC draw part milled faces. It's very much the same as this over here. It tells CabWriter which of the faces of the part we want to pay attention to. I've got it set up to say all of the inside faces are the ones that are important and will be cut on the CNC. So let's take a look at that. So the inside face is this face. So that tongue and groove will be cut, or that groove will be cut, as well as the dado on the CNC. Similarly in the front, the inside of it. So the dado will be cut here. On this side, it'll be the groove and the dado. And on the back, it'll be the dado. Now, if I wanted it instead to cut the rabbets on the other side of the, let's say, back and even the front, and then cut this dado on the table saw, I would go here, and on the front and back, I would choose outside. And then it would instruct the CabWriter to produce DXFs that would cut the outside of the part. Typically you want to use the inside of the part, but there it is. Okay. So now that we've done that, and we've created these parts, let me put this back. And now we're going to, one more time, we're going to do the create production documentation. And this time, we're going to not ask for these. I've already got them. But I'm going to ask for my cut list again, because it'll be different now. It'll include, well, no, it won't, not yet. Let me close this out. I missed a part. All right, so what I want to do this time is I want to go to my cut list, my Cutlass scene, and I want to add to it base draw boxes and upper draw boxes. And I have to remember to update it. I'm going to do the same thing to the DXF scene. I'm going to add the upper draw boxes and I'm going to add the base draw boxes. And I'm going to update it. Now I'm ready for my production documentation. And I will not ask for these. I will ask for a new cut list that'll include the draw box parts. And for DXFs, that will include the draw box parts. And this is going to take about 1 minute and 10 seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it and let it run offline and come back when it's done. We don't need to be sitting here for 1 minute and 10 seconds, but let me get it started. Okay, and so here we are. It's done. Now I can simply go to Cutlass Bridge, Sheet Optimization, and notice now, whoa, I'm missing a type here. Let me close this out. I'm missing some plywood. So let me see what went wrong here. I have a feeling if I look at extended entity info and select, do a Control A to select all the parts. Oh, the material type is rough lumber. So where did I make the mistake? This should be plywood. Right away, right now, I'm going to change this to sheet goods, maple plywood. Now I thought I'd done that when I had chosen this, but let me see. Oh, I can't do that now. But I think what happened was I didn't, I think I chose it once in the dialog box called tongue and groove style draw box. I think I chose once that it was sheet goods and maple plywood, but I think what happened was I made a mistake, closed that box, and when I reopened it to correct my mistake the second time, I didn't make that change again. But let me just do this and rerun the report. And I'll do it offline so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, I've redone them. So now let's look at the Cutlass Bridge sheet optimization. And here we are. And let's see if we have our, there we go, 5/8 inch plywood. That's our draw boxes. And here they are if you want to cut them on a table saw. This is the optimization sheets that you would cut. But if you want to cut them on the CNC, we'll say close down here. And look at them on the CNC. DXF, I should say. So there they are. Notice that what we're cutting here, and you can see that here, is we're cutting the groove for the tongue, and we're cutting the dado in the sides. In the front, we're just cutting the dado. And if I can find a back here, well, there's the back. And again, in the back, we're just cutting the dado. So now you have them, you can cut these draw fronts and draw backs, sides, and even the bottoms on the CNC. Okay. That's pretty much it. I suppose we could look at the cut list, but it's not much different. And this DVD is getting, this video is getting pretty long right now. So, I mean, you'll see them on the cut list like as any other part. All right. Until our next video, have a good day.